Alright, guys, it's finally time. Harvest League is over, and we're going to talk about Harvest League. We're going to talk about my builds. Uh, it's not a build guide. I don't recommend anyone builds this build. I don't recommend anyone plays anything that I play ever, because it's usually a terrible idea, and my motivations are uh, not normal, let's say. Um, So the builds that I make end up being pretty weird, but that's why they're interesting. So that's why we're going to talk about it. And this is going to be a long video probably. Um, yeah, I'm not really sure where I want to start, and I haven't really planned it out, but I'm going to try and cover all the things I want to talk about. We're going to talk about how the items were made. We're going to talk about harvest crafting in general. We're going to talk about crafting in general. I don't know, talk about stuff for a while. So let's start by equipping all the gear, and we'll kind of talk about the gear as we go. And I think, yeah, we'll just go item by item, and we're gonna see where we get. I've dubbed this build the Cock Arc Miracle Tank. And as the name would implies, it is a tank build that uses cast on crit with arc as the damage skill. So the damage is not the focus of the build. It does good enough damage to do all of the content, up to and including 100% Delirium T17 maps. Those are very hard, and I can't say that it's something that I would want to run on this build all the time, um, but it can do them. And I'm sorry I can't show you a video, but my new computer is still not yet assembled, and so yeah, it would not be. We'd be watching a slideshow, is what would be going on here. Do, 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 do. So yeah, I guess the first thing we're gonna notice here is that I have 48 unallocated skill points. Why? Because I've unequipped all of my jewels. And if you had a glance at my inventory, aside from first noticing that I have 5 unnatural instincts in my inventory, you'll notice that I have a fuck ton of jewels in my inventory. We have 16 jewels and 5 abyssal jewels. So this build uses 21 jewels. So we're going to start by, I guess, slowly popping all these boys in, and we're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about corruptions a little bit later, but generally the whole thing with Harvest is that in Harvest you could deterministically make all of the gear that you wanted to make, and you could make it the way that you wanted to make it. And you could do a lot of things, which we'll talk about, that you can't otherwise do. So one of the main things that I did was I remade my gear, identical gear pieces, over and over and over again, like 6-7 gloves, 6-7 boots, 6-7 shields. I only did 3 armors because that one was really expensive. We'll get to all that stuff in a bit. But just so that I could try and double corrupt them to try and get some really good corruptions, which we'll also talk about in a bit. Oh god, there's so much to go over. Indeed, golf trade. Right. But yeah, so the first thing that I have to preface is that I've made a lot of jewels, and I corrupted a lot of jewels, and I made a lot of gear, and I corrupted a lot of gear over and over and over to try and get specific corruptions, and we walked away with almost none of the ones that we wanted. I think I bricked over like 50 items, and I maybe hit like 2 or 3 double corrupts. It was really unfortunate. We played down to the last day of Harvest, and the last day was definitely one of the best days I've ever had playing this game. I was dancing. My luck on last day of Harvest on point. But yeah, so let's start, I guess, with the jewels in the middle here, so because those ones are pretty easy. So we have this one, and I believe this one. So you're going to notice I've actually skinned a lot of these items. So for a long time, I have, for a long time, I've wanted a character on standard. I have never had a character on standard with all its gear because usually when a league ends, I keep the specific items that I'm really happy with and I sell the ones that I'm not happy with an intent of some sort to finish it later. This is the first character I actually managed to finish to a point in a league where I actually want to keep all the items. Um, and so it's one of those things where I just decided I wanted to skin everything on the character because I want everything to look nice. And you can see even now, like I have a bunch of unskinned stuff, so we haven't. But um, I think this is going to be the first character where I actually get it to that point that I'm just going to skin everything. It's going to look beautiful, and this is going to be my standard character for a long time to come. Um, it's very unconventional, so it should be relatively safe from most nerfs, with the exception of a couple that are already touching it this patch. Um, very lightly, and I kind of saw those ones coming. We'll talk about that later. It a lot of things in this are going to lead into other things, and we're going to get there. I promise. It's just going to be a while. So let's talk about these jewels. So, first thing we did here was make not quad, triple multi jewels, right? So with Harvest, what you could do was you could use non-critical crafts, as well as remove add casters to very easily, once you chaos spammed for elemental skill multi, get spell critical strike multi. These are the best two multi suffixes because they both go to 15%. So it's better than global crit multi. And so then you could get the prefixes very safely using non-crits because you could just safely remove all of them because they're elemental. None of the like crit prefixes are like untagged in any like hard to remove way that would screw with your suffixes. So it's really easy to make triple multi and then get life on them. And then you'll see here that we have one of our first payoffs to having all these jewels, which is the 10% reduced elemental damage implicit from, again, Harvest Crafts. So you won't be able to make this kind of a jewel again. And this is something that we made basically to kind of jack our damage. Once we had all our like stuff all bulked up and we were all tanky, we were lacking a bit of damage. So I decided to make some multi-jewels to kind of fill that gap since we are playing a crit build. And then they still give good life per point kind of thing. So we have two of these. This one is the better one that I managed to make, which is damage penetrates 1% lightning resistance. I was really hoping I could get one of these with 1% reserve so I could cut it elsewhere, but we've vaulted so fucking many of these jewels, you don't even know, like 20 of these jewels, more, and we did not. So, and what we did, of course, is we synthesized the base so that we could get the effect on it. We couldn't do that for this one, and it's just like a matter of like some gems already had synths by the time I got around to making these. But this jewel, we needed the implicit, so I couldn't synth this one. But for this one, the goal was to synth it, and since most of the synths suck, and we weren't very likely to hit one we actually wanted on the prismatic jewel base, we just we wanted to vol off the implicit to get an actual implicit so that we could keep the effect and have it look nice, but make it not a bad jewel. So the prismatic bases themselves, I have one here actually in my little split shop. So what I did to get these bases, these prismatic jewels, and there really isn't any benefit per se to this. They do have slightly different mod pools and slightly different weightings on some of the things, I believe. But it's mostly just a flex, same with the timeless jewel, just because everyone asks about them. No, like, it's amazing to me how many people don't know how to make bases. But if I can find here... Yeah, so what you need to do is you need to brick jewels that are prismatic jewels to get rares, right? And then you use the 5-for-1 vendor recipe to get a blank base back. This is how most bases are made. So these ones you can see they're eye level 100. That's because these are actually bricked Emperor's Masteries. which shares the same artwork as the actual prismatic base, whereas these are just bricked watcher's eyes. They all work. You just need 5 of them. Brick to rare. Or anima stones also work. And if you brick an anima stone into a rare, it'll look like an anima stone, right? But whatever you like use, the artwork that you're gonna get is gonna be the default one here. And then what we did was we used Fenimel Plagued Arachnids to split the base, a copy of the base, which is a rare beast from Einhar. And it lets you basically duplicate a rare item that does not have an enchant. So you can't use it on things like cluster jewels. Can't be influenced, can't be synthed, can't be like anything, right? Just like clean bases or like specific stat bases. You can you can duplicate. So what you could do is you could roll this for elemental multi if you wanted to, for example, and then you could imprint it. And then you could like craft on it, and then like if it bricked, you could like restore the imprint. Or what you could even do is you could split the base, and then depending on which way the split goes with the Fenimel Plagued Arachnid, you can use the Kraka Chimeral imprint to restore the copy that doesn't have the Ellie multi, and then they'd both have Ellie multi, and you've like duped the stat. These are like fairly complicated crafting strats. I'm not really doing them a good job of explaining those ones, but you can look into those further elsewhere. There's a lot of information on them because a lot of people do them to make a lot of bases and things. As I say, we're like 2 jewels deep. All right, like this is gonna be a long video. Oh my god. Okay, so next we have let's jump over to our Watcher's Eye here. So our Watcher's Eye is perfect stats. I checked the market every day for the entire league for any combination of double purity fizz taken as jewels until I got this exact jewel, and you'll notice that we actually divined it to literally 1 off perfect, which is like insane. I would have preferred if it had the 10% been like 99% crit or like 5% mana or like not all the rolls really matter, but I couldn't bring myself to roll over this one because it's just such an absurd like conquest of RNG hitting like something this close to perfect on this jewel. But I paid a total of 3 exalts for this jewel. The person didn't have it priced. I offered on it just based on the price of just a regular double purity jewel because like that's what people sell them for, and that's what he sold it for. I would have been willing to pay up to 50x for this jewel because for me it was perfect, but it is a very niche jewel, and so it wasn't too hard to get it for a fairly reasonable price once one showed up on the market, and it took like 2 months before one actually showed up. I was very happy that day as well, I can tell you. And I should just mention that these jewels without whenever I made one and I volled it and it like didn't brick, each one of them went for about 7x when I like resold the base. So these were like pretty good value craft that I did to sustain some currency outside of like splits and stuff last league. Let's see. So then we have our Thread of Hope here. Now, this one's interesting. So this one goes here. We're currently using a very large ring, but they are nerfing glancing blows, and I'm thinking I might switch back to a medium. But I'm going to show you what I take here now, and I'm going to leave it for now. But I might end up changing this one later, which is why one of the reasons I haven't skinned this one yet. But what we do here is we take the glancing blows, and then we take these 2 life nodes, right? The 8% for 1 point is very good. Helps us recoup some of the points spent to take the jewel socket. And then a 5% node here is just like your average life node, which is pretty good for what we're trying to do here. And we'll get more into that later as well. And that's basically just it, because we're just trying to get the glancing blows. But you also have access to some other stuff here I'm going to talk about, and then I'm going to talk about the medium and why I might consider the medium. So this node is 6% attack speed, 20 dex, 5 move speed. So aside from the 5 move speed and the 20 dex, which can be very helpful if you need it, the attack speed is really good if you're like lacking. The way that cast on crit works, as far as I understand, and I haven't really min-maxed it to the point where I've done all the calculations on this stuff, right? But when you use your cast on crit with like Cyclone, every time you hit, you're going to do your spell, and then your spell goes on a cooldown. So scaling attack speed is valuable until it becomes a hindrance. And what I mean by that is that if your cooldown is greater, like the time for your cooldown, like 0.14 or whatever, is if that is greater than your attack speed, then every time you hit the enemy, you're going to proc your skill, and then you're going to be doing max DPS, and then the more attack speed you get, the better. Normal, right? If you pass that threshold, that break point, of whatever your cooldown and recovery is, what happens is that you don't hit every time, you don't cast every time you hit, because your spell is still on cooldown when you hit sometimes, up until you hit the second breakpoint, which is basically somewhere close to like double. Double's just a number I'm throwing out there. It's like somewhere up there, right? Like it's not double, not exactly. You'd have to do the math to see what it is, but the point is that there's a threshold where you'll start hitting them twice, within, or sorry, you'll be able to cast twice, within the span of your cooldown reset and attacks. I'm explaining this. I was explaining it fine. This part is where it gets hard. Let me see if I can reword this a little better. Sorry, yes. So your cooldown comes back off, and you hit them again. I don't think it's that you're hitting them twice within the same. You're not hitting them twice within the same cooldown. That doesn't make sense. It's. I think it's just that you're basically you're able to go faster because you're not hindering yourself with your cooldown. I don't really understand the intricacies of it. I'd have to look into it a little bit more. It's a very confusing mechanic, but the basic idea is that you have a threshold and you don't want to go over that in attack speed unless you can meet the second threshold. And I think it's even worse if you're dual wielding, because if you're dual wielding, then each of your weapons like has its own hit, and it can get really crazy. Which is why we're just simple. We're playing a tank. We're using a shield. We're using one weapon. We go to the first threshold. We didn't bother pushing the second threshold. But if you need more attack speed, huge tangent just for this one point. If you need attack speed, this point is very good. As well as this one, which gives 5% attack speed and 14% damage and strength and int. As well as this one, which gives 8% attack speed, because it makes your minion attack speed mods affect you. And then what you could actually do is you could actually get attack speed for minions on like other things like jewels and stuff. And then you could scale that as a stat and get more attack speed. So these are all really good attack speed nodes within the radius that you could take. And if you're trying to hit that second threshold, you would probably want to take those. But I think where I am right now, I'm a little, even once I have all my like flasks up and my frenzy charges, I'm like under that first threshold, so it's okay. But as soon as we hit that second threshold, like you would get way more damage if you could hit it. So these would be really good nodes. So for mediums though, like what you might do is, because this is getting nerfed a bit, is you could take this node instead. Now this node gives you 4% block and spell block, which is great because it's not doubled by glancing blows, but it helps make up like a slight amount of the difference, right? And then you get 12% all res, all in one point, and the 12% all res counteracts the 12% or the minus all res that you get on Thread of Hope if you have 12% or less. And you see here I have minus 11%. It's not even quite a perfect jewel, but that's because if you were to like take this one, it would like counterbalance. And then the other upside of medium is that you also have, I believe, this point in range, Divine Judgment, which is like 50% increased damage is huge, because we don't actually get a lot of increased damage on other things compared to other things in this build. We have a lot of flat, we have a lot of pen, we got a lot of like take extra, but the increases I don't think we have a ton of. So this is a like huge damage node. And then there's also this sneaky one over here, the staff node, and we're not using a staff, but it gives you 10% chance to gain an endurance charge on melee strike, crit strike, which is not requiring you to have a staff. So this gives you endurance charge on hit basically because you're critting all the time, right, with cast on crit. So I really like that part of this jewel. I think that's one of my I think it's one of my like reasons I really want to go for that one. But right now we're going for this one just because these life ones, and that's because our initial goal was to hit 10k life, and we did end up hitting 10k life without making too many compromises. We made a lot of compromises to like stack life, like just like as a thing, but to push that extra bit to 10k, like I didn't have to scrap like this jewel to get that last little bit to 10k is what I mean. Like we didn't make any compromises like that. Okay, so moving down the jewel train, we have intuitive leap with 1% reservation, along with this one with 1% reservation. To take these reservation nodes and this reservation node, sorry, not this max chaos res and chaos res node. We'll get to the chaos res in a sec, but the reason we need all this reservation is because we are running exactly 5 auras. And the reason we're running exactly 5 auras is because when you go to click your control bar on the bottom here, you can see that there's only 4 skill slots. Sorry, 5. Yikes. So because there's 5 skill slots, you would have to like click to like change your like abilities to put it back on all your auras, and I hate doing that. This is a problem that goes away with Path of Exile 2, but this is the reason that we didn't try and fit in like a Herald somewhere, do some other stuff with auras, or like try and stack more auras. It's the reason that this build is not an aura stacker, basically. And if this build was an aura stacker, it probably would have been much more broken, because aura stackers are broken. So in a way, we are like a bit of a mini aura stacker, but it's not the same build at all, and I wouldn't call it an aura stacker. Anyhow, yeah. So like, these are the things, which is why like I don't recommend this build to other people. This was like a personal preference choice that made the game more enjoyable to me. And if you want to do big dick and you want to go zoom zoom and you want to like not die, you're probably better off with like a Herald stacker or something, right? And the other thing I should mention, the reason that it's a tank and not an immortal build is because I don't like playing immortal builds. Because then the concept of a tank is kind of lost. The point of a tank is that you're taking the hit for the other team, but if you're immortal, you're not really like taking the hit. Like you're not taking any hits. You're not taking any damage. It's no fun for me. I'm sure there's plenty of people who like that playstyle. That's not for me. That's why this isn't that build, right? But let's not spend it. So you'll see here we have a glorious vanity. This is the spot for it by mind over matter over here, and we also have 1% reserve on this. And this is probably one of the bigger pogs of the league. This is one of the actual good corrupts, because I could tell you I bought this one, and I did not buy this one, but I spent 8 hours straight buying intuitive leaps to vol them to get this jewel, and I doubled the price of the market. There were literally none left for sale if you excluded the people who didn't respond to messages. I raised the price from like 35C to like 80C in like 8 hours. I bought all of them, and I hit jewel after jewel, every corrupt except for this one. We hit corrupted blood like 3 or 4 times before we hit this one. So in the end, the corrupting blood jewels kind of like kept us going, so that we didn't run out of currency until we hit it. But good fucking lord, this jewel was a huge cock, and I didn't want to buy one myself because they were like 25x or something stupid at the time, because all the Herald boys were using them. And there's another reason why I don't recommend this build. Oh man, the budget! If you haven't noticed already, you're not going to be buying this build with 1020x. Not even close. But let's take a closer look at this glorious vanity. This is not the best glorious vanity, and I can say that because I spent 200x on divines to roll glorious vanities, and I hit ones that were better than this, but they were not Doriani Glorious Vanities. They exist with those numbers on standard, but the ones on standard don't have reduced elemental reflect taken, and I probably can't corrupt them to hit 1% reserve. So I have still one Glorious Vanity base with reduced Ele reflect that I can keep rolling on if I want to improve this later. Because if I get the 1% on something else, one of the Abyssal Jewels or something, like if I decide to corrupt whatever, or on like an Unnatural Instinct or something, which were, despite all the Unnatural Instinct skins from when I was voling them, because I was using it and trying to get a 1% reservation one, I don't actually use one in the build anymore. I cut it for the crit multi-jewels. But if we were to get like one of those with 1% reserve or something, we could replace this jewel with a better one if we were to roll it. And I will tell you the number that I found that is good. It's 4024. 4024 on this jewel gives you, I think, 9 or 10% on here. I think it's even got good nodes here as well. And then it's got, life, with the Ritual of Flesh, which has regen. And then it has 3% aura effect within these travel nodes. It also has another 6% down here, so you could go down here as well and take those really good ES nodes, and that could be really good if you wanted to spend some points on that and sack some life to get better EHP overall, which is probably a good idea. But yeah, 4024 Doriani Jewel, or even like if you want to like skip the Doriani build, you could go Zabaqua and you could kind of stack things a different way. You could cut some of the auras. But I'll let you guys figure that out if you want to do that. So let's just take a look at this jewel. So we have cast speed, useless to us. We have evasion, not very helpful. We don't really have a ton of evasion, but you know what? It's not like a bad stat, so we'll take it. 1% attack block, another 1% attack block, very good. Spell block or something would have been better, but like you're not going to complain much. And then we have the 9%. These nodes roll between 6 and 10% life. There's only 2 life nodes that you can get for this node, and they seem pretty rare. And honestly speaking, with 200x of divines, I'm pretty sure the fucking names on the jewels are weighted. I swear to God, Doriani is not as likely as the other outcomes. And then the regen can go a lot higher as well. This is like minimum regen, but that's okay. The point here was we just needed the life so that we could hit the fucking... we just needed the life so we could hit the fucking 10k life. But with the life and aura, you can do some changes to the cluster jewels, and you can make the build a lot better. Maybe not so with the nerfs coming. Those might change what would be optimal once we get to talking about those. But yeah, and then if we were to go down here, so the thing is right now we're connected here by these attack speed points, but if we were to cut these, we could take these 3 points, so this is 1 extra point over these, and we get 8 Chaos Res and 4% ES, which is like a node and a node. So like we're getting 2 node value for like a little less than 2 nodes value for the price of 1 extra node that we'd be spending. And that could actually be really helpful to us. That 8% Chaos Res is pretty valuable in capping our Chaos Res, which is why we care about the max res and we care about this node at all. Although if you wanted to like cut this to like put a point elsewhere as well, you know, you could do that too if you wanted to like cap your Chaos Res elsewhere somehow. And then, of course, if you were going Zabaqua, the Chaos Res would matter even more than that. But Zabaqua was getting nerfed anyways, so I'm very happy right now that I went with the Doriani route. Hopefully it'll last a little bit longer. But the biggest thing about this jewel that made it so fucking hard to roll is you want it to have no resistances except Chaos Resistance. Because we're using a perfect balance Wise Oak, we did not want resistance on anything. All of our resistances come from our 3 purities, and it's perfect balance. We don't get res anywhere else. And so that was a big challenge because there were a couple ones that would have been really nice here, but we couldn't do it. And that's all the regular jewels. We're making a little bit of progress here, so we're going to hop into the clusters, okay? So we're going to start with this one. I believe this is the lightning. Yeah, this is the lightning jewel. So here we have, again, reduced LE reflect taken. And you can see here we went for tier 1 strength as the first thing that we got. Then we used lightning crafts and whatnot. Sorry, not lightning, fire crafts and whatnot to get corrosive elements, because corrosive elements very difficult mod to get. These being harvest crafts I'm talking about, like rolling these is very different in any other league, right? And then we did Aug Fires to get the Vengeful Commander, which was a very likely outcome. But because we have a very high level Wrath, the stat is very good for us, even though we don't really scale auras the same way that other builds that are aura stackers do. And then for Doriani's Lesson, normally you could force it by doing double Aug Life on the suffix and then remove life. Sorry if this doesn't make sense to you if you weren't doing like the harvest stuff. But I mean, I hope it's somewhat interesting to you because you didn't. And then, of course, if you were doing harvest stuff, you know what I'm talking about. But so we actually had to RA life just one stat for this until we hit it. And this is, of course, 8 passives, I-84. You need I-84 on cluster jewels to get T1 rolls, so all of these are I-84 and above. And then, of course, the big upside of this jewel is that we can take these points and skip the top node if we have the Doriani's on top. Now, initially, if you had like, I believe I had an Overshock jewel instead of Vengeful Commander, it was Overshock, and with the Overshock jewel, Doriani's was on top. And in that variant of the jewel, what you can do if you get a Glorious Vanity with Lightning leached as life, you could cut the Doriani's and save 2 skill points, and then invest in actual life nodes that are better than just the 9% that you have here. And that opened up a lot of possibilities when looking at Timeless Jewels, but we didn't end up hitting any, so we just end up taking all the ones on this one. But contrary to that, we only have to take the 5 on this spell damage one that we have here, and this one is synthesized for a crit multi. The other 2 stats don't really matter for the synthesis implicits. Again, we went for the strength first, and then we had to force RA caster, blocking a suffix, until we hit the 2 prefixes, Arcane Adept and Mage Hunter. The reason we went for Mage Hunter is that it gives us power charge on block, and we don't really have another way of generating power charges. And I didn't go for a Crusader Explodey chest, which we'll get into later, so we couldn't just get power charge on crit like you normally would. So, generally speaking, if you're just face tanking things as a tank and you get hit by spells or attacks and you block them, you're going to get power charges and it's going to be fine. And then anything where it's not actually hitting you because you kill it super fast, you probably didn't need power charges anyways, right? And then Mage Hunter also gives us Spell Block, which is a very elusive and difficult to get stat compared to Attack Block. So you're going to see we tried to get that in as many places as we possibly could. And then for the top node, if we were to take it, is Thaumaphage, which gives us Hinder on hit, some really nice Spell Leech, and spell damage on full energy shield. But inevitably, we get all of these things elsewhere and don't really need them. It's not a very good jewel for us. Whew. Okay, we're on to the mediums now. It's getting exciting, I know. And just I should mention that the 4 crit multi is the best synth implicit you can basically get on clusters and things. Most of the other ones are really bad. It's just like a couple flat life or whatever, and a couple flat life's good, but 4 multi is like actually like relevant to your damage, especially if you're stacking up multiple. Okay, so we're starting here. What do we got here? Let's do the 4 passives on this side. So we have 2 4 passive I-84 Aura Jewels. They're very different from each other. This one has 35% increased effect to boost the suffixes with Eli Res, Chaos Res, and Precise Commander. So we take all the points here, And the reason we take all the points on these ones is because the 35% makes these 8% aura nodes, which makes them better than a node like this, which gives us 6%, or this one, which gives us 6%. And we've perfectly managed our aura effect on this build so that we hit 90 max res. There is a slight complication that we do have +1 max res from one thing that we probably wouldn't have gotten, like that you realistically can't expect to get on your build, and so I was able to improve the build significantly because of that. So I actually had to redo my clusters to be these ones. Initially, my clusters looked a bit different, but I'll explain what they were like now, and then you can kind of extrapolate like what they were before based on that, I guess. So basically, we're getting all of our resistances basically from cluster jewels. So we really want that increased effect to get that R effect and those resistances and those max res. And then the precise commander here, we wanted to stack as many of as possible because it's one of our few sources of crit chance, because crit multi happens to be better than crit chance on most items when you look at the stats together. So you take crit multi on most items, and then you're not left with a lot of crit chance, but you really need that crit chance. So, or at least I feel that you do. I don't like it's not that I don't like the inconsistent damage. I don't like the inconsistency of the crits, the inconsistency of casting, right? Like I like the variance in damage that lightning damage has, but not critting all the time can kind of make it feel very flaccid, I think. So the 12 multi is on its own a little bit worse than its average multi node, but it's kind of made up for by the 30% crit chance, and then you don't have to take any like stupid travel nodes, and that 30% crit chance is way better than your average crit chance node. If we compare to this one, this is 20 crit chance, 20 crit chance, 15 multi, 45 crit chance. These are like I want to say like 35%, not 35%, 5, 5, 10, 10. I want to say like roughly 30% crit chance nodes, all to get one 15% multi node. And these are some of the best ones because it's global crit chance, right? And the global crit chance better than the spell crit. That's why you don't see us taking like these spell crit nodes. You could alternative to like going here, you could like go up here for 4 points, for 1 extra point, and take basically these 2 nodes for the value of 1 extra point. This is like pretty decent, but we're kind of, I really wanted that regen. You really wanted that little bit extra life. I didn't really want spell crit because global crit's better, and I already had enough crit at that point, so we kind of went down here. But again, we're kind of tangenting off from the fact that Precise Commander is a very good node, and so we tried to get this on every one of our medium jewels. So we have it on this one as well, but this one does not have 35% effect. This is our only cluster jewel that does not have 35% increased effect. And basically the reason for this is that we can go here and we could literally skip this point entirely, at which point 35% would be better. We could get 8%. But because we have enough aura effect that we don't need the extra 2%, it makes no difference to our threshold. We'll talk about aura thresholds when we get to the purities themselves. Actually, I can mention now. So, fuck, there's so many things to talk about. So many things. So, the purities give at level 23 plus 5, I want to say max res. I give or take 1, right? And then it scales plus 1% max res every 20% aura effect. So those are the thresholds. Basically, this 2% that we don't have doesn't cost us the threshold. So we lose a little bit of chaos res and the slight amount of like all res from our things and a little bit of damage, but we can skip this entire node and the value from the node is worth it. But we could skip this node regardless of whether or not we take 35%. However, this node is very good because we don't take it on a lot of other items. So you'll notice that we have this node only on this jewel where we can take it without conceding Precise Commander. and the large cluster jewel. Um, and then just as a note, this node is also getting nerfed along with Precise Commander because basically they're hitting these because of actual Aura stackers who have actual builds. Um, and so I'm not really sure how well this particular one is going to hold up. But at the time, this was like the best thing that we could do. And I'm sure I'm not explaining this part very well, but I hope you're getting the general idea of what we're doing here as we go through. So we have two more 5 passive aura clusters. And we went for Precise Commander on both of them, and we do take all the points here because these are 8% nodes, right? In theory, if we were to get our effect elsewhere, say here, we could make one of these a 6 node. Or sorry, we could make both of these. Is it both? I think it was we could make one of these a 6 node, and we could cut another one of these down to a 4, and then we could optionally maybe add another Vengeful Commander. But it's just so much, and the 6 passive ones are like 30x each, and like you have, in order to do that, you have to get the more aura effect on your Timeless Jewel, which is just, it's just so out of reach that it's just not reasonable. Anyhow, so here we have again the strength and the chaos res, and the strength and the chaos res, the strength to get ourselves again more life because we are doing some pseudo strength stacking to get as much life as we can. You can see we have no gear equipped right now. We're up to 3,000 life, 800 energy shield. That's because the Glorious Vanity is giving us 20% increased maximum life as maximum energy shield, and then 50% of non-chaos damage taken bypassing energy shield. And we'll get back more into that mechanic later. But as you can see, with just the skill tree and like the jewels we put in so far, we're at 3k life. And now we're going to put in the life cluster jewels. So we have 4 life cluster jewels, and they're all 3 passive, with tier 1 strength. Sorry, they all have tier 1 effect on them. They do not all have tier 1 strength. 1, 2, 3 of them have tier 1 strength. This one has tier 1 all attributes just because we need a little bit more for our items. You can balance that out elsewhere. This is how I chose to balance it out. I conceded the little bit of strength here to get all of my resistances settled. Sorry, all of my attributes settled. And we didn't go for an all attributes plus strength one because we couldn't concede the resists on any other spot on any of our jewels. So with that said, we're going to start with this one, which is our cheapest one to make because this one was just reduced Deli Reflect implicit. And you can see each of these nodes gives 5% life, 21 life, 10 chaos res, and 18 strength. So you get 54 strength, 30 chaos res, 15% life, 63 flat life from this jewel. People ask all the time about Fettle. Fettle is the budget version because if you get Fettle with tier 1 flat, you will get more life by a little sliver depending on your scaling. Sometimes you don't get more, but also you lose out on a lot of the resistances. So you can't really afford to be sacrificing all those resistances when you're investing all of those points into other niche things on your build. In an actual league where that isn't Harvest, where you can't do all this stupid tier, like top end perfect crafting, and it's more feasible to actually get resists on your gear, and to do that, and specifically if you're not playing a build that's using triple purities to get your resistances, there is an argument to be made that you want Fettle, tier 1 flat life, and a 2 passive jewel even because you want less travel nodes to make the fettle more valuable to you. But this jewel just gives so much stuff in value that not having 35% aura effect for the like fraction of the life that it costs you is not worth it. I hope I've done a good job of explaining that. It's 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 the kind of thing that people overlook often, because when you take fettle, you also lose this entire third passive point to a notable. That means you get no suffixes on that stat. We would not be chaos res capped or res capped if we took fettle on even one of these jewels. I think that's all I really want to say about that. We're just going to talk about the other jewels, kind of with that presumption that everyone understands that for this situation and for a lot of other situations, fettle is not necessarily better than tier 1 effect percent. Although there are plenty of situations where it is, there are also plenty of situations where it isn't. Right? Everyone's build is different. Okay. It's a highly contested topic, so I wanted to make sure I addressed that properly. We're going to do those two last. So we're going to go to this one now. So this one is really interesting. So I didn't think much about this one for a while. Like, I made it the same way as the other one, and I synthed it, and I was like, oh, yeah, spell damage leeches, yes, that's great. Because at the time, I was getting spell leech elsewhere. I am no longer getting spell leech elsewhere. This is enough to, like, spell leech cap, as far as I've been told by people I've asked who are more knowledgeable about leech than I. Or maybe not cap per se, but, like, it's enough to, like, sustain me pretty well, right, for my damage. Anyhow, the point is we needed one source of ES leech, so we had a way to sustain it, and this gives us that source, which saved us 2 skill points from our large cluster jewel earlier, which we can only save because of this configuration of where the locations of the mods on the large cluster jewel are, and that's something you always want to keep in mind when looking at large cluster jewels, because skipping that top node can save a couple points, and that's really valuable when you're trying to like min-max all these points into your tree. So yeah, that one ended up being really good. So then we get into our better two. Now these two are both arguably mirror tier. Both of them are obscenely difficult to hit. The method we used to hit these was we did reforge more likelies on the 2 suffixes that we wanted until we hit double tier 1. This is not easy. This is a 1 in 225. Assuming that, like, one on top of having to chaos roll to get like the 2 suffixes you need together, you have to then more likely it like 225 times, but it just decides to randomly fuck off into random other mods half the time. So you have to keep re-rolling those things as well. It's literally the worst like fucking craft I've ever done in my life. It's super aggravating. But we did get double untagged suffixes, in this case tier 1 all res, tier 1 strength, and tier 1 all res, tier 1 all attributes, on our +4 life synth bases. And then we did reforge keeping suffixes to get the 35% increased effect, which was also fairly pain in the ass. And then we did RA lives a bajillion times to get tier 1 flat life, rolling over fettle a bunch. And I should just clarify that tier 1 effect, tier 1 life is better than it's contested whether or not it's better than the fettle with the tier 1 flat, but it is not contested that it is better, or sorry, that tier 1 flat and tier 1 effect is better than fettle and tier 1 effect. Because obviously tier 1 effect loses out on a lot of value when you lose that third mod to a notable, and then you don't have another prefix to scale with it, it becomes a lot worse. So fettle plus tier 1 effect is worse than this, but it's contested whether or not these are better than I'm ranting too long about this. I'm just gonna move on. We got a lot of shit to go over. Oh goodness. Okay. So with all of our life cluster jewels in, we're now at 4,300 life. So we're at a regular player's amount of life, and we haven't equipped any gear yet. So let's start equipping the gear now, I guess, right? Put them in my temp tab. Boop. Hope this is enjoyable to you guys. I'm having a blast trying to explain all of these things because it's just one of those things that I don't get to rant about ever, and I'm really happy to have the opportunity to do so. Where did my items go? There they all are. Okay, let's start with the ones that I made first. Let's do them in the orders that I made them. So the first item that I made was my helmet, right? Because helmet gives big DPS boost when you get your nearby mods, or the nearby mods are big damage boost, right? This is not the first iteration of my helmet. The helmet was just the first item that I started working on for the build, right? So the way that this one was made, I'm not really going to talk about how the bad ones were made, is we did fossil crafting with hollow fossils until we hit the untagged mod of all elemental res, so that we could aug lightning and then RA lightning for the nearby res for lightning res, so that we had our triple suffix. And I'll get to why we're doing abyssal sockets once we get to the abyssal sockets. Actually, once we get to the boots, I can explain it. But basically, from there, the rest is pretty easy. You got Fizz taken as Ellie, and Fizz taken as Ellie is the main way that we stop Fizz damage from hurting us very much, because we otherwise don't really have a lot of mitigation for it outside of a few sources. Hopefully I don't forget to talk about Pantheon later. But yeah, as much Fizz as Ellie as you can take in is really good. So we tried not to sacrifice it anywhere, and that's one of the main reasons that our chest is not an explode chest, actually. And then we started double corrupting them. This was one of the only items that we actually got a double corruption on this league. And luckily, this is the only one of this helmet that I had to make to get it. This is the other helmets were not this identical helmet. I didn't have to remake this helmet a bunch of times to get this implicit. The problem is that the implicits are not useful to the build almost at all. The cannot be blinded doesn't actually matter because we have hits cannot be evaded on Scepter. Although if you were to stack precision, you could probably do accuracy instead, and then maybe I'd be really sick implicit, right? And the +2 to fire gems could have been really good, but the way that the gems have to socket in, it just came out to not being useful, because even though we did need plus level of gems, unless we had +2 somewhere else to cold, it's just or aura or whatever. It's not useful. But let's say we had +2 to aura on another item, which we do actually. I'll get to that later. But we could just have them both in that item. So this ends up giving us +2 levels to our flame dash, and that's it. Obviously, we went for the arc chains enchant, and yeah, I mean helmet's pretty straightforward. We don't really need to go into a whole lot more about that. And then the auras we had, the gems we had in the helmet were Blood Magic, Flame Dash, and Enduring Cry. And the reason that we are using Blood Magic on this particular setup is because we don't use Blood Magic on our main ability. We cast that in a different way. And we have... I'm saying we a lot. I've got 0 unreserved mana, exactly. With 3 1% reserve jewels and the amount of reservation on the tree and on items, it's flat 0. And what I actually did earlier in the league, I remember my earlier iterations of the helmet had reduced our effect, as well as my earlier iterations of my amulet had reduced our effect. And then I ended up cutting them for different things. So as you can see, the final version of the helmet did not have aura effect on it because we wanted to get the double suffix, and we could not do that and get Redeemer influence. Yeah, let's do the shield next. I know you're gonna think I'm a sack, and you'll be like, you have double corrupts on all your items. Huh. What do you mean you were unlucky? I thought you said you didn't get them. And yeah, no. So this is +2 aura gems on shield. So this is probably the most frustrating item on my entire build because it's literally the implicit that I needed. I needed this implicit somewhere, or like an implicit like it somewhere on my build to solve the problem of getting your gems to level 23. And that's not even entirely true because I found a workaround which we'll get to later. Fuck me. But but the problem is that I really, really wanted on the shield to have Fizz taken as Ellie implicits. And there's 4 of them that you can hit. You could even hit 2 of them on a double corrupt. And I would have so much preferred to have those. And I know I must sound like such a cuck right now. Like, oh, I'm complaining about my god tier double corrupt. What are you doing, right? But I really wanted that corruption, you know. I don't think I've okay. There's one corruption on this build that I am very happy with. And it's the first corruption I think I've ever been happy with in Path of Exile, because it's literally like the best thing ever. But until I hit that item, over my entire time playing Path of Exile, and I've been playing for a long time, and I've double corrupted and corrupted so many items, I've never hit a GG corrupt on a good item until that point. So, you know, I was really hopeful that, you know, when you make an identical shield to this one 6 times, that you'd actually be able to get a double corrupt that you were looking for that's fairly common to hit. At least one of the Fizz taken out. I didn't, like, double would have been great, but, like, I would have been so happy with one. And then the +2 trap in Mind Gems is kind of a little bit wild there. If you're using like Smoke Mine or something, maybe that's useful, but otherwise not super great. But let's talk about the actual mods on this shield, because it's an interesting shield, right? So I actually had, on the earlier versions, when I couldn't get all those reservation items, I had the reservation mod on it, which is why we initially made this this shield to begin with, because I wasn't going block to begin with. But, you know, you start looking at the mods and you're like, oh, well, I'm trying to hit 10k HP. Maybe I'll go for 5% life. And then, you know, when we ended up switching to Doriani's from Zibako, which was my original plan, on the Glorious Vanity, I was like, well, I might as well get the energy shield too. Because what happens is that since I'm now stacking block, and then I gain on block, I have an absurd amount of life and energy shield. So what happens is that normally, on a normal person's build, you take damage to your energy shield first, and then you take damage to your life. So something that gives you both energy shield and life on block is very useless. Because unless you've already lost all your energy shield, you're losing the recovery to your energy shield. But with this build, with Doriani as a mod, 50% of your non-chaos damage taken bypasses energy shield, which means anything that's not chaos is being split evenly between our energy shield and our life until we're out of energy shield, which we will run out of a little bit quicker than our life, but only if we're in like pretty damn serious trouble. Like if you're running out of energy shield, you're in trouble. That's basically how the build works. So this ended up being really good. And then we went for the +2 all max res, and this isn't what I was foreshadowing to earlier, but it is very important. This affects chaos max res as well, and is very good stat. +1 to all lightning skill gems for the damage, spell block, and max life. We got this one by more likely crafting the bench crafted spell block every time we chaosed it into max res until we hit double tier 1, and then cleared the other mods, forced all the other stuff. That was pretty easy. We had to lock suffixes. And I'm going to talk about the item names now, and you can kind of check them out as we go through. But with the sole exception of the helmet, because we did the helmet before we did every other piece of gear, and I hit the double corrupt on the helmet, and I didn't hit double corrupts on my other pieces of gear. Lord help me, I fucking tried. I decided that I did not want to make another helmet until I got my double corrupts on my other gear, or at least tried to. And so we never got around to remaking the helmet. But every other item on this build, for like my actual like gear, is named Miracle. Something. And this is done in two ways. If you're not sure about how naming item works, there's two methods that you can do it, one of which is only possible in Harvest. And because one of those methods is only possible in Harvest, I decided that it was the only league that I could do it, so it was the only league that I would do it. So I decided to name every piece of my gear Miracle. So running around the point a little bit, the main method is that on the crafting bench, you can have up to 3 crafted modifiers. With prefixes cannot be changed, suffixes cannot be changed for 6 exalts. This only works if you have 2 open suffixes, 1 open prefix, and what happens is that you can chaos orb your item without changing the mods that you want to protect. Basically, the reason that this matters is that when you chaos orb your item, you will re-roll the name of the item. So you're basically rolling only for the name of the item with your chaos orbs. Names of items have 67 prefixes. They all share the same prefix pool, with the exception of, I believe, a couple things like Abyssal Jewels. I think Abyssal Jewels have a different naming convention, but I forget. Anyhow, the suffixes there's like 20 of, usually, but it depends on the base type. So not all bases can get the same suffixes, but all bases can get the same prefixes. With the potential exception of Abyssal Jewels, I forget. You'd have to check the wiki. The wiki has the full list of all the item name affixes. So yes, we'll come back to that in a sec. That was the method we used for this one. The second method is you can spam Reforge keeping prefix or Reforge keeping suffix harvest crafts if you only have like half the mods on the item already. Then you can force the name that way and then force the rest of the mods. Because when you do augs and removes and exalt slams and whatnot and annuls and things like that, it doesn't change the name. Only when you reforge the item will it change the name. So yes, that's basically how this works. And there was a slight workaround that you could do as a third method that I'm just going to mention because it was really cool, but I didn't get to do it on any items. So I tried on one item to do, instead of multi-modding, to do prefixes cannot be changed, and then reforge keeping suffixes, with the item having full affixes, because the difference between cannot change crafted mods and the keeping mods from Harvest is that the keeping mods, you keep your mods, but you can still add new mods, whereas with the cannot change means you can't add new ones. So what happens is if you fill the affixes, the idea is that nothing will change, but because nothing will change, it won't let you do the Harvest craft. So you can't do it unless you leave an open mod and let yourself potentially randomly add a new stat, which could brick your item. So we didn't end up necessarily going for that method because it's risky and much more expensive at 2x per roll, whereas the other ones were like 4 or 5 or 3 sometimes to 1x per roll. And then, of course, the cheapest method being the flat 6x to just pick any name you want by chaos spamming after you spend 6x on an item that has 2 open suffixes and an open prefix. So wherever possible, we did method 1, and then wherever not possible, we did method 2. And this is where the bulk of my currency from the league went. This is why I was not rich this league. It's because I spent hundreds of exalts on stupid shit. And I do not recommend you do the same thing unless it gives you as much pleasure as it gives to me, in which case do it because it's worth it and you won't regret it. It gives you such a great feeling of attachment to your item when you care that much more about it, when you've named the item yourself, right? You picked a name you like your item, you're going to stick with that item, you're going to finish that craft. It makes it feel so much more impactful, and I could tell you it hurts 10 fucking times more when you lose it on the fucking double corrupt. Anyhow, so yeah, we made like 6 of these shields to make this shield. Okay, so I guess we can't do the shield without doing the scepter, which has the exact same name as the shield. Miracle spell on both of them. So same prefix, same suffix, which again I believe is roughly around 1 in 1300. I don't know if these ones are as rare for the suffixes as the as like body armor was. Body armor was 1 in 1300 for like any specific outcome. But like the idea was basically that we hit this one, we finished our scepter, and so we wanted the shield to be named the same thing. So we just chaos spammed like 1300 times whatever until we fucking hit it, right? That was the play. But yeah, let's talk about the scepter, because this was a huge bitch, and I have not corrupted this one yet, and I do not intend to corrupt this item. I think if there's any one item on this build I'm not going to corrupt at the end of this video that is not yet corrupted, it's basically this one. Because even though there's really good implicits that you could get for this build, I would never be able to make an equivalent scepter again in any other league, I don't think. It's just so absurd. I mean, you never know, right? Maybe one day I'll make a better scepter, and then I'll be like, oh, I guess I don't need this one anymore. I'll vol it. Maybe it'll hit something good. Maybe it won't. Yeah, basically the idea is that because we've gilded fossiled this item, we would want to single corrupt it, because if you single corrupt the item, it will only remove one of the implicits. So there's a 1 in 8 chance when you vol it that you will replace the gilded mod, keep the 40% damage, and hit something that is potentially helpful to you. Whereas if you double corrupted, you would remove 2 implicits to add 2 implicits, and therefore, and yes, that's how it works, and I can prove it later because I have an item to represent this. But the double corrupt will remove 2 to add 2, which will replace the LE damage. So you would want to single corrupt an item like this. The way that this one was crafted was we did hollow fossils with 4 socket resonators or 3 socket resonators, I forget, until we hit +1 spell skill gems using etherics and whatnot. Of course, because we're using etherics, there's a fuck ton of caster mods. You're going to have spell damage. So this thing survived like 3-4 annuls. I say 3 or 4 because I had to make the scepter twice, because I'm a fucking idiot. Because the first scepter I made was a void scepter. Because when I started this build, I was not playing cast on crit. I started playing self-cast, I switched to cast while channeling, and then I switched to cast on crit. And void scepters have the same implicit as opal scepters, and the same attack speed as opal scepters. But they have less base critical strike chance, which matters for your cast on crit. So I remade the entire scepter, mod for mod, as an opal scepter. And as an added bonus, I would have been okay with it, or like at least vol the other one and like whatever. But the reason I really went for this craft as well, and I was not satisfied with my completed void scepter that cost me fuck knows how many exalts, is that opal is my birthstone. And when I found out that the opal scepter was better, I just had to fucking have it. And these may all seem like stupid reasons to you, but these are the reasons why I play the game. These are the reasons why I don't burn out, right? If you're suffering from burnout, it's because you probably don't set yourselves goals like this. Like, this is just like, this is raw enjoyment of the game for me. And so that's why I do it. Anyhow, as for the other mods, they're pretty easy. We just did RA lightnings, and then we blocked the prefixes to do RA casters for the double damage, and then RA crits to finish off. and then 3x for hits cannot be evaded, to make sure that every hit with our cast on crit will hit. And then in the scepter, because it is a 2-link, and yeah, we probably could have gone double crit on this, and yeah, maybe it would have been better, get some spell crit, but I don't think so. I don't know, dude. Nebulous might have actually been a better scepter. But we needed the Abyssal Socket here because I didn't want to concede one on my tree. And yeah, I just didn't want to make the compromise to give up one of those multi-jewels on my tree. But a Nebulous here probably would have been better. So if I made any compromise, it's that I skinned my item with a Nebulous. Anyhow, so in here we have an Enlighten 4 and our level 19 Purity of Lightning. Okay, that puts it at level 22. With the plus level of spell skill gems, plus level of lightning, plus level of lightning, and it will actually come out at level, I think, 23 or 24 once we're done equipping all of our stuff. We'll take another double look at that after. I believe that's what it comes out to. Yeah, because the AME gives it a level, I think. Anyhow, we'll come back to that. Let's see, where are we at? We're at 5k life here with shield helmet and a scepter. Oh, I didn't put my gems in here. So the gems that go in the shield are another Enlighten 4 and our is the 2 purities that go in here? I think we put both the purities in here at 24, and then the 19 gem goes to 24. We'll double check this in a sec. We can put on those, and you can see we're not quite at our cap of 90 res here, so we'll just keep an eye on that later. So let's go ahead and let's equip our belt. Belt's pretty self-explanatory. I will vol this one at the end of the video. This is Miracle Twine. This is the second of this belt that I made. The first one I did with attack speed as another suffix. So if this one bricks, I will just use that one instead. I will go over the enchant later and the conch ground thing when I go over some of the other stuff in a bit. We're getting there. Oh my god, I promise, we're getting there. I hope you're enjoying the video. You know, you don't have to watch it all at once. I know it's going to be a long one. But I can't bear to split this into 2 parts. I just like it. I need to say these things. So, what do we have here? We have strength and attributes, and then we have double T1 life, tier 1 energy shields. And basically, this is exactly what it looks like. It's just as much life and energy shield as possible as we can get on this belt. No damage mods in sight, basically. We have 17 strength and int on it because it puts us slightly over 10k life right now. I think that it would be better to get cooldown recovery speed because we have 3 cooldown things that care about cooldown. Cast on crit being one of them, which might actually be a pretty sizable DPS increase if you got a little more attack speed, I think. And then the Enduring Cry that we have, and our what's the last phase run are all cooldown skills. If there was like a little bit better management with the auras, and you got like maybe some +1 to socketed gems action going on because you got lucky, and you could get level 5 enlightens going on. You could maybe cut an enlighten somewhere, and then you could oh fuck, was it? You get like a second wind on your phase run. That'd be sick. Second wind on phase run would be really good. I really wish I could fit that in somewhere, but my abyssal sockets won't allow it. Oh, I should mention, I learned this league the hard way. You cannot get abyssal sockets on shields because you cannot use hollow fossils on shields. Why? I don't know, but you can't do it. You can do it on your weapon. You can't even, I don't think you can even check some of the items with hollow fossils on Craft of Exile. I think it breaks for some of those. A huge shout out to craftofexile.com, by the way. You must use it if you are trying to craft anything. That website got me through every craft I made myself or helped other people with this entire league. Anyway, I think that's about it for the belt. The reduced curse effect we'll get to when we get to the rings. So let's do the rings next, I guess. So for the rings, we have 2 curse on hit rings, conductivity and assassin's mark. And the curse on these is 35% on the Crusader version, but not on the Shaper version. The tier 1 on Shaper is 25%. Why? I don't know, but I can tell you it made it a fuck ton harder to roll these goddamn rings because, or at least the conductivity one, because you can't Awakener's Orb 2 Crusaders mods together. Sorry, this one here. But basically, these give 70% reduced effective curses on you. This gives 30% on Conquer Ground, so we are immune to curses on Conquer Ground, basically. We have 100% reduced effective curses on us. Then we have our double curse. We got our +1 curse from Ascendancy, which we'll go over later. And then again, these are just thick dick, crit chance, life, flat damage. We got the double gold oil anoint just because, like, I don't run blight maps, but it's the most expensive anoint, so that's what we put on them. It's pretty cool. And those are some big life. So we're now at 6,500 life. And this is one of my proudest crafts of the league. My original rings that I made, I forgot to gilded implicit them, which doesn't really matter too much. But I kind of wanted to like corrupt them, and I missed the opportunity to really do that because I didn't name the first ones, and I didn't gilded fossil them. And what I settled on rings that had the suffix of I, because at the time that was cheaper to make than trying to get miracle on everything. Although I eventually, as you can see, just got miracle on everything. But Miracle I is again one of those exact mods, and we had to do the reforged keepings on this one because of the type of item that it was. So my surprise when we hit this, like on the last day of League, when crafts were scarce as fuck, on like the... Fuck, I used every one of my benches. I had like 50 benches saved up, didn't hit Miracle. And then I bought one bench from one guy, and I fucking hit the exact name that I wanted. I was like, okay, go until you hit Miracle, or like, I don't know, if you hit like I with something good like Oblivion, like, I don't know, well, maybe we'll consider keeping it, because like we're running out of crafts on the last day. And you hit Miracle I first try. I literally, I was dancing in my room, dude. It's something so stupid, and yet it's so good. So I'm really hoping that I don't brick this one when we vol it later. Alright, so let's get to the good part. This is probably the best thing I crafted all League. I made like 5 amulets. As you can see, we managed to corrupt off the gilded implicit and hit the absolute fucking jackpot of +1 max res. The only thing that would have been better would have been +1 curse, because if we got +1 curse, then we could try and get like plus curse implicit on gloves and save 3 skill points on our skill tree, or we could just switch ascendancies maybe. Like, I could have redone my whole fucking build over the corrupt like that. But the +1 all max res is the reason we had to change all of our clusters. And as you can see here, we went for Wrath reduced reservation instead of all reduced reservation, and that's because we only have so many auras that this is actually better for us and allowed us to hit that perfect amount of reservation that we were looking for. And you can see again here the +1 level of all lightning skill gems, which is why we are using again level 21 versions of these gems, but only a level 19 version of the Purity of Lightning. Which is now at level 23. I have a feeling that I had these in gloves, and I might have to switch these around. So, yeah, let's take a look at gloves then next. So the gloves. Oh, the gloves. Okay, so where do I want to start? There's a few things to talk about here. So obviously to roll these, we hollow fossiled first, and then we did blocking a dot multi-mod, and then aug influence until we hit the 1 in 12 for a block attack tier 1. Or if we hit the really rare cull mod, which I only hit on one of the like 7 or 8 gloves that I fucking made. And they all looked like this one, by the way. Like I'm not kidding when I said I remade these items identically like 7 times to double corrupt. Like I did brick like fucking 7 of these things. Like maybe a couple of them like didn't explode, right? They got like all white sockets, right? But like, like I they definitely didn't sell back for the same amount because they're fucking really niche as what I like paid to craft them. Now you can see here we got the +1 level of AoE gems craft with AoE to boost our Cyclone AoE, but then the AoE gems affects the aura gems. So I believe what we actually meant to do here is put these in here so that all of our auras are now 23, which puts them at high enough for the 5% max res. And then I guess we can't really check the max res until we've got all the stuff equipped, right? Until we have the chest equipped, I guess. Gives us our effect. But that should put us at 90 max res. And then the implicit of, the enchant of Commandment of Light when you take a crit means when you take a crit, you spawn Conk Ground. So we have Conk Ground when we take a crit, Conk Ground when we hit a rare unique enemy, again, Ascendancy, we'll get to that in a bit, and Conk Ground on our Sulfur Flask. And Conk Ground makes us immune to Ellie ailments, as well as now immune to curses because of our other gear. So this was like hugely important. Like if we take a hit that is not a crit, we can actually we can get frozen. And if our flask is down, we're actually frozen. We like our freeze flask is our sulfur flask. So this is like the saving grace of like if you're not like up face to face with something that you're hitting that's going to be spawning conquer ground, if something jumps on you and you're not ready and they freeze you, once they crit you, which is fairly likely that they'll crit you before they kill you because tank, but you'll spawn conquer ground, unfreeze, and then you're fine, and it's amazing. Getting there, getting there. I want to do the chest last. Okay, let's do the boots, and then we can do the abyssal sockets. Boots. Miracle track. Damage pen. Boots are the other thing, like the gloves. We made like a ton of these, and we just couldn't get an implicit corruption on any of them. So disappointing. Oh, and I'll mention that after these ones didn't brick when I corrupted them, I started doing Sork gloves instead, because if you double corrupt, you will replace both the implicits. So there's no point in having the fingerless for the implicit, so I'm really disappointed that they all fucking bricked. I would have loved to have just had one, and the glove corrupts are like the best fucking corrupts, right? You got your curse, you got your like spell crate, you got your life, like so good. Anyhow, so the boots are a little weird. So the boots we had to Awakener's Orb. So we would Awakener's Orb, Tailwind, and Elusive, right? And then we would completely fucking ruin the boots. We would just hollow fossil over the Elusive Tailwind, and then get our name, and then get our other stuff. We had to fossil with Corrodids to get the tier 1 Avoid, Bleed, and Poison mod. And the reason that we have this mod is because we stack 100% Avoid Bleed so that we don't need a Avoid Bleed flask. We're just bleed immune, and we also didn't need a Corrupting Blood implicit on our jewels. So that we had space to get all the other things that we got on our jewels that you've either seen or are going to see in a sec when we put on all the abyssals. Move speed, also great implicit here. If you want to go for move speed here, you can get Unnatural Instincts, another 9% move speed. You can get a lot more move speed. Once the league started dialing down, I wasn't focused so much on zoom, and I was more focused on, I want big dick. Love the big dick. I was more enticed to go for pen on all of them. Okay, so jewels. We have here 5 identical. Not identical. We have 4 identical and 1 different jewels with a bunch of different implicits. So let's start. So we have 2 reduced Ellie Refract jewels that have the same mods. It's tier 1 life, avoid bleed, tier 1 crit multi, tier 1 lightning damage just with spells to holding a shield, perfect roll. Can't fucking speak, holy shit. This shield mod is really, really rare, by the way. And you can see I corrupted some, but not others, until I didn't have, like, backups. Once I was, like, I didn't have backups, I, like, stopped corrupting kind of thing. Okay, so then we have this crit multi one. Just crit multi implicit. And you can see we tried to corrupt it for the thing, but we didn't get anything because we don't. Then we have some synth jewels. So the synth jewels are really fucking lit. These are the reasons that I redid all my abyssals at the end of League 2. So we have 2% to taunt enemies on hit with attacks and 2% to blind enemies on hit with attacks. And this is really important because they're suffixes on not hypnotic jewels. And if you use not hypnotic jewels, you can't get the damage prefix, which we really fucking badly needed to make our damage not shit. And then the hinder on this one as a suffix because we have enough avoid bleed that we only need it on 4 of the abyssals. We'll talk Pantheon now real quick because we have 25% to avoid bleed on Pantheon, so we have 25, 35 plus 40, 100% avoid bleed, right? Cannot be blinded, cannot be maimed. Oh, cannot be blinded. How about that? It's almost like this is a fucking useless corruption. Sorry, I'm tangenting again. And then we took Lunaris just for like some move speed, fizz reduction, dodge, whatever. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Okay. Hinder on hit. Yep. So that's the Abyssal Jewels. That's why we did the Abyssal Jewels. I wanted to Abyssal Jewel stack to get my niche things like Hinder and Taunt and all that stuff, and then I wanted 100% Avoid Bleed so that I could do Flasks. So I guess now we'll do Flasks before we get to the body armor. And you can see that we're looking pretty thick on EHP here. So this is our life flask. It is a quartz flask that heals us for all of our life and then takes us for 8% of our max life as chaos damage per second. And it's a quartz flask, so you get phasing and spell dodge on your life flask, which is great. And the damage tick that you take is basically nothing because we're chaos res capped with over max res on chaos res. Diamond flask with the enchant on it. With max roll, reduced charges used, pretty standard. All of these flasks are 26 qual for maximum duration. I did go for maximum duration on this because, again, it's quartz flask. I want the benefits of the quartz flask, and I don't care about the dot. Cool. Okay. Rot gut. Better than I expected. Shout out to Zeus for making me switch to it. It was good. Basically, I get frenzy charge on hit for my chest, which we'll go over soon. So I guess we'll do that next. Oh, buddy. Gain a flash charge when you deal a crit. Right. So this lasts up all the time, basically. Not all the time, right? Because cooldowns on that sort of shit and whatnot, but it's up a lot. This is like ultimate zoom flash. You click this flash, you gain onslaught, and then especially if you're hitting things, you have elusive and stuff, and it all stacks. You go so fucking fast. This flask is sick. Would use again, honestly, since the buffs. It's been a really fucking good flask. You just gotta make sure you get that minimum roll increased charges used, 50%, not 100%. Don't be mistaken by stuff like that. So that it doesn't just consume all of its charges on use. Then we have a Bottled Faith. I spent way too much to fucking max roll these 2 mods, only to get a shit duration roll. I should have just paid 30x and got a perfect one, but no, I spent 50x on Divines and got a subpar one. Whoops, oh well. And then a Wise Oak, because obviously we're perfect capping our reses and whatnot. I think I went over all that. Okay, gems. What gems are we missing? Right, the shield gems. Zealotry, Wrath, Enlighten. Wow, 0 mana. How sexy does that look? And oh yes, I should mention we have minus mana cost on the rings, which is what makes our Cyclone not cost mana, so that, lo and behold, we don't need mana. Amazing. And then we have cast when damage taken, Immortal Call, Stormbrand. The reason that we have Stormbrand on this thing is that what happens is boss hits us. We're tanky in the sense that we have a lot of HPs, so we take damage. We have glancing blows, so even when we're blocking, we're still taking damage, I guess. So very easy to proc the cast when damage taken. Boss gets, or other mobs get, Stormbrand. Stormbrand constantly reapplies all our on-hit effects like Unnerve, like not blind because it's on attacks. That other one. What's it called? What's that other mod called? Unnerve and corrosive. Corrosive Elements gives it. That's not what it's called. Oh, whoops! I forgot to spend these points. Wow, look at all that life that we have. Exposure. We want to make sure we're keeping the boss applied by our things. Boop, boop. boop would have been great to get some corruption. Like any corruptions on this build would have just been like nutty. Like any like plus level or like move speed on boots. Keck. Like percent life, percent strength, percent ES, like fucking anything, dude. Our effect on rings, whatever. Okay, so now we get to the chest. So, story time. I wanted the chest to be named Miracle Shroud. I did not want any other name. I was willing to settle for up to 4 other suffixes. We hit the name Miracle Shroud. It took like 300 reforged keeping suffixes. Very lucky, actually, because it's like, again, specific name, like 1 in 1300, right? Shout out to Searing Goat for selling me like 300 benches. But before Searing Goat sold me like 300 benches, we had to make the base, and the base is, let me just alt here, you can see, Frenzy on Hit and Aura. These are both untagged Redeemer mods. So they both have very low, like lowest weight, 250. So you can't woke them together, you can't force them. There's 2 tiers on Aura, which kind of is a bitch. And I wanted it to be shaped for appearance because it didn't really actually matter which second influence I had on the item. Although later there was a time when I was testing Vinctar's, and Vinctar's pretty good flask, like reasonable, would recommend. And Vinctar's has less lightning damage taken, so having Fizz taken as lightning instead of Fizz taken as cold for the sake of Vinctar's is possibly okay, but doesn't really matter at the end of the day. So, what was I gonna say? Right. So there are 2 methods that you hit this. You either do 800 3-socket resonators with Bound, Corroded, and I think the third one was Sanctified. Might have been Pristine. Might have been Bound, Corroded, Pristine. I forget. Sanctified, I think, was the best one, though. The 1 in 800 or something. Which is, or was at the prices that they were, pretty fucking absurd. And then you have to hit it with no bricks. The problem is that when you have a Shaper base, Shaper has so many fucking mana mods on top of what, like, untagged shit you already have, that almost everything you get is with them is going to be a brick. So you have to make sure when you get them you don't get a brick. So what happens, we started spamming them, and every time we hit T1 Aura, because Aura is 2 tiers, so we wanted to get the T1 Aura before we did the thing, we would try and block defense mod so that we could aug influence to get the 1 in 37 to hit Frenzy. With the block, it was 1 in 37, which was ES on kill. The problem is there's ES on kill is a 1 in 3 defense suffix, and because of the remove method that I'll get to in a sec, it was very easy to get a lot of defense prefixes, so you'd spend so much fucking currency just trying to even get your block mod. It was so nasty. So basically you'd aug influence, you'd get shit, and then you would annul it, and then if you hit a prefix on the annul, you would non to defense for the 50-50 to remove the brick mod, and then when it adds the prefix, because of how the weighting works, or did with adding a defense mod, and you already have a defense suffix, it would basically every time it would add a defense prefix, and then you could just go again, right? But very, very, very difficult. It took us like 60 plus X, I think, to hit the first one. I forget the number. Maybe it was like 50. I don't know. So we hit the 2 mods, right? We hit them, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna name it. So we started getting reforged keeping suffixes. Now I have bought a lot of crafts this league, and I'm just gonna pull up on my other monitor here and show you guys if I can. No, the TFT, the Forbidden Trove Discord, which I highly recommend you join because it's very useful for buying and selling services, and you make a lot of currency doing that. And I don't just mean harvest services, I mean like boss carries and fucking double corrupts and stuff sell for a lot more than you'd think. Anyhow, God, my finger started hurting all of a sudden. What what was I talking about? Right, the chest, the chest. So I was buying crafts. I've bought thousands of crafts, like maybe like 3,000 crafts this league, and I only had someone brick my item, like hard brick my item once, and it was on the fucking chest. And it was the one time I decided to trust a guy who had one vouch. And you know, he gave me collateral, and his collateral was his gear. And I could have kept his collateral, right? Like that he messed my item, could have kept the collateral. That's how the collateral works. That's why you give collateral, right? But because he was a broke Andy, right? But I would have felt so fucking bad taking this guy's gear. I couldn't bring myself to take this guy's gear. So I mean, I just said, look, if you can help me recraft the item, like that's all I can really ask of you. I don't even know if I can make another one this league. That's really stupid of me because I ended up making another two, but not with the name because the name was a bitch. But that's not the point. At the time, I wasn't making a ton of currency, and I was kind of not. I wasn't really farming very efficiently, so um, I didn't think I could hit the chest again. I was down for like a week. Um, the guy gave me the one bound fossil that he had handy, and I was just like, man, keep it. He was like, do you want like a couple? I have a couple. I'm like, it's not gonna hit me the item. I don't want to take your currency. Just like if you have aug influence crafts or whatever, and you help me recraft it, like sure, let's just do that. Fuck it, whatever. It was half my fault. What happened was I posted in the want to buy channel. I said, Reforge keeping suffixes want to buy, and he PM'd me. He said, Reforge keeping prefixes have for sale, and I said, Reforge keeping prefixes confirm. Like an idiot, I was just echoing back what the person was saying as a confirmation. I didn't really think about it. I like the guy PM'd me the opposite craft. I didn't. I was like, yeah, I need the craft, the Reforge keeping. Yeah, like it was my fault. I confirmed the wrong craft, so I wasn't gonna ask this guy to like we did like another like confirm later, right? And like I had asked for the specific craft, and he did give me the wrong craft, but I was half at fault here, right? So it was like I don't know. It was just a feels bad all around, and it's just like I outside of that one instance, I've had no other problems in the thousands of crafts that I've bought and sold. Sorry, not sold. I actually bricked someone's item just I want to say a few days ago. In the end of league rush for vouchers. But of course, what I did was I fixed his item in like an hour and gave it back to him, and then gave him free crafts, and gave him more free crafts, and then finished his item. Um, Anyhow, but yeah, basically, it's generally safe to say that like you can like fuck ups can happen to anyone. Like it happened to MP, it happened to like MBX. Although fuck, I feel so bad for MBX. Someone ripped his like 600x wand, and then they were being an asshole about it, and then he didn't get anything back out of that, and had to redo it. That was oof. Um. Anyways, the moral of the story is you're fine to trust people. I think on these things any mistake someone else can make is a mistake you probably could have made yourself, and you might be like, oh, but I wouldn't make that mistake. But like, yeah, you might fucking make the mistake. Like, come on, no one's fucking perfect. Let's be real here. You could be watching, you could be like, yes, this is the one, and then you click and you're like, fuck, why did I do that? That was the wrong one. Like it happens, right? Like um that said, yeah, I've seen a few unfortunate instances, and that particular craft was one that a lot of people fucked up for a lot of other people. It was just like it was one of my favorite crafts in terms of the things it could do and how it worked, but it was just so easy to mess up. It caused a lot of people some trouble, I'm sure. Anyway, so the point is, we made the chest, and I was so happy when we hit the exact fucking name, and this is my pride and joy of the league, maybe more so than my amulet. I'm really not sure. The amulet's so fucking pog, it's hard to tell. So then what I did was I was making split bases later in the league, and I made 6 white assassin's garb. Or sorry, sacrificial garb. I did also make an assassin's garb as sac garb, and so I was like, oh, you know what, it'd be sick. I don't really need like a little bit more ES because I'm not really percenting the ES or anything yet. Like, I have the like life quality enchant on it, so I'm like, oh, I'll make one on a sac garb, and that took me fucking forever, and I finally hit it, and I double corrupted it, and like everything else, it poofed. And so then I was really mad. So then I was like, okay, we're gonna make another one, and we actually did hit another one, and then lo and behold, that one poofed as well. So I didn't even get to keep one with Fizz taken as lightning. But I'm kind of okay with that because they didn't have the name, and this is really what I was after to begin with. So I will settle for not having the double corrupt on this one item. I'm very salty about the gloves and the boots, though. They look so poor without the fucking implicits, dude. So incomplete. Anyways, I'm ranting again. So obviously we have Awakened Cast on crit. We got 23 qual on that one. We got a level 21 crit strikes. We got a level 21, 23 Vol Arc. For a Vol Arc gives big dick increase when you use it for your regular arc. We have Woke Lightning Pen, I think level 6, and then Woke Added Lightning, level 5. And as you can see, I think we forgot to allocate some points. Yes, we forgot to allocate these ones. And we are now at 10,000, 5,200. I was at 10,000, 6,000, but I min-maxed a bit for damage because 5,000 ES is kind of better to say, just like better to say 10k 5k than 10k 6k. I didn't really care so much about the ES as much, right? So that was my experience with the league. It was the best league I've ever had. I played right to the last day. I was all in. I made a couple other things that I'm very happy with. That I can also show off. I made on the last day this triple T1 ES, T1 mana, T1 attributes, T1 strength upgrade belt for my the only item I've ever previously mirrored was a worse version of this belt. And I sold one mirror service for that old belt, and I'm very happy that I now have this one for my attribute stacking mana guardian for later. We made a occultist vestment base, and we got some single shaper and elder ones that the people who made that base and myself will probably not be selling. These ones you can get dual influence shaper elder on, whereas it's otherwise with 6 whites impossible to do, and this matters because you can make an elder shaper shavs, which I guess per se for the sake of gearing doesn't really like affect your stuff, but as a rarity thing, it's like we have the only ones that can be made. I made multiple just because I know I'm going to double corrupt them and I know that they're going to brick. But I'm very happy about those as one of the things I made this league. I did finish almost all of my split bases. I did not quite finish the stupid evasion base. If you need split bases, hit me up. I am charging a fee because I'm lazy as fuck, and if you don't give me currency, I probably won't get off my ass to go to standard because I'm a lazy piece of shit like that. As well as I have a like one of these non-anoint ones because fuck the anoint exploit, whatever. If you want to like fracture those. And then there was one other big one which is on my other character, so I guess I can just hop over real quick after. I mean, it's been like an hour and a half or something. I don't like what's one more fucking like couple of minutes, right? To go check out one other item. But before we do that, we're gonna vol item A, item B. Just contemplating if I want the cooldown recovery instead of the strength and int, but I think I'm going to keep the strength int because it's 17, which matches the 17 life and looks nice. The 10k life. Ooh, it's so fucking tempting. If I changed it, I would not have 10k life. That's reason enough to keep it, right? Okay, you know what? Let's think about it. Let's do the ring. I have backups for these items. That's why I'm okay with doing this. The miracle build has been complete. It is okay if it is an ephemeral completion. We're going to do single corrupts because we want to keep the actual implicit of life. So we'll start with this one. That's so sad. I was so attached to this ring. Which one? That was the... This is my connectivity ring. So we need that ass mark ring. We'll go with the... Victory Eye is nice. But I think we're going to keep this one because it has the matching gilded implicit. And it has Oblivion, which matches not just my helmet. I forgot to mention both these jewels are also Oblivion. And both my mirror tier... quote-unquote mirror tier. Nobody's mirrored them, so I can't really call them mirror tier. I mean, you can, but, you know. Not the point. Tangenting. The... God, I'm so sad. What was I saying? Holy shit. I've lost my train of thought. You'll have to forgive me. It probably wasn't important because I wasn't thinking about it. Alright, let me just check how much CDR. How much CDR does this give? 12? Fuck it. No, we'll keep the 17. If it was like 18 or 20 or some shit, like maybe. It bricked, but kept max roll T1 life. This is my life. I mean, I can't complain because, again, sorry, not this one. I hit, like, miracle beads, right? But, like, yeah, it's just like, come on, man. I've missed so many other corruptions. It's my backup belt. That's fine. I probably need the attack speed anyways. Alright, we are no longer 10k life. What are you gonna do about it, right? Okay, there's one other trick actually I can show you because of this. So because of the vendor mod, you can actually check. You can't see the outcome anymore, but because this is not one package, you know that it's not a mirror shard or an exalt. And you can see this one's gumball. So even though you don't know what it is, you can at least like take the chance on your like vendoring your brick item if you see only one mystery box. Although it might just be chaos or something. Alright, these are going in my it's just gonna go in a tab. I'll make a brick tab. I'll have to put other stuff in there later. I have other stuff. Don't you worry, do I have other stuff to brick. Oh no. I have these ones, but I don't really necessarily... I don't think they could really get much better if I corrupted them because they'd lose the implicit. So I'm just not going to bother. Alright, so I guess that's that for that. Let me just talk about my passive tree, I guess, real quick, and then we'll hop over and I'll show that last item. So, passive tree, what did we do? We, right, so we went over here, we grabbed the reservation, right? We grabbed the reservation. And I will mention that I league started this from day one to the last day. I did not switch builds. I do not recommend anything close to this as a league starter. In fact, I recommend playing an actual league starter as your league starter. Because as it turns out, not being able to do anything for half of the league yourself makes it very difficult. Although I'm so happy that I have so many people who I can lean on, who I can rely on, who are very happy to help me out and enjoy doing so. Or at least I hope they enjoy doing so. But I mean, I assume that if they didn't enjoy doing so, they just wouldn't help me, right? So, we have fun. I help people. They help me just in different ways. Right, so we come up here. You can see we're not really grabbing anything other than just life. We go here for life crit. We go over here, grab life. We go up here for reservation. We're just grabbing those clusters, grabbing these clusters. There is an argument to be made that instead of going down here, you go over here and then take this jewel socket. It costs a couple points more, I think, but then you're able to spend 3 points for this +1 curse, which I think if you get the corruption on gloves becomes worth it, right? And then we got reservation here, more life, just this for that little bit of chaos res. Oh, right, let's take a look at the res. You can see we're at 79, 90 all with 92s. And then we get, this gives us 3% aura. And just kind of the way you want to calculate these sorts of things on your tree, like this is 4 points to travel here. From like we have to take these points to take this node. So this is just isolated. If I wanted these, it's 4 points. So this is 686 is 20% life. So it's 5% per node, but it's only 5% per node if we take this 6% node, which is why we don't skip the 6% node, even though we've gotten the notable already. And yeah, if you need a little bit more chaos res, you can like swap one of these out for one of these. You can do all sorts of stuff. There is on this one that I'm using, it's 5424. It does also have life or effect life, which can be useful, and it does have the 9.95 regen, which is nice. So that's pretty cool. And I think that's about it for that character. I did Pantheon, right? Ascend and See. So we're Scion for more skill points, and we are immune to stun while we are occultist. Or sorry, while we have energy shield, we get a bit of ES regen, get a bit of life regen from these points and whatnot. And this gives us the +1 curse for our 2 curse on hit rings. And then here we get the ailment immunity plus a lot of damage. And then the crit multi while they're affected by ailments, which is why we're still using the Ellie focus, awakened Ellie focus instead of sorry, we're using the awakened added lightning damage instead of awakened Ellie focus. Sorry, I got that backwards for a sec there. Anoint Constitution for big dick life, right? Yeah, so let me just hop over real quick, and I'll show the last other item that I was made. I didn't make a lot of items that weren't for that character this league. I'll say that, or for flipping, right? Like outside of the belt that I made on the last day, and then the this amulet that I made on the last day. Those are the only 2 items I made for their builds. And this one was also a bitch and a half. Took out like 150 reforge, keeping prefixes after we missed like a remove on the influence mods, because it's you can't like force the +1 int and the malevolence together, as well as the fact that it's Crusader, and we made it. Well, yeah, if it wasn't Crusader, you can kind of force the int gems a little bit, like much easier, I would say. But I wanted Crusader because, as you can see, this is my character from a previous league where we went all Hunter Crusader items. Even the bow, which is not this one. This is not the bow we used during that league, but this is my other prize bow, so we use this one here now. I replaced my Hunter Crusader one. But during the league, we did all Hunter Crusader, so I really wanted one of these because I couldn't finish it in the league. You can see we're missing some items here that are elsewhere. But yeah, that was that. Hope you guys enjoyed. I should probably mention who I am before I dip. For people who don't already know, if you stuck around this long, you might be interested, right? So I'm just a guy who is the guild leader of a small guild. We have a lot of people, but as you can see, end of league. Well, league just ended, so kind of quiet. We got like 50 people, a little bit more. And if you're interested in joining our little guild, you can message me. I'll leave my forum thread link in the description below. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's it for now. I was top 10 on the service providers for Harvest League, and that was one of my big goals, and I worked hard for that one, and I'm very happy that I can actually say that I got there. It's goals like that that really keep me going, and if you set some of those things for yourself, other than just, oh, I'm gonna get a headhunter, or oh, I'll just like make my gear until my character is good, right? If you like try and like give yourself some setbacks, give yourself some road bumps, it could be really good.